This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by BitRefill. BitRefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, we have a highly anticipated episode that we have dubbed the Brazil Roundtable. We have a group of highly esteemed, illustrious Brazil semi-experts who are here to join us. It's an audio-only podcast, so you'll have to track their voices somehow. It'll be interesting for the listener, but we have here with us one Brazilian to help even it out and a whole bunch of gringos. Our one Brazilian is Francisco Litvai, previous podcast guest. Francisco, say hello.
Hey guys, my name is Francisco Litvai. I basically work with helping Brazilians move abroad, pay less taxes, and get second passports. So basically the opposite way, mostly like shipping Brazilians out, but also shipping foreigners in. So we do it both ways.
Yes, his brand is called Settee, Settee. It's kind of like My Latin Life, but in Portuguese in a way. So we also have Jers, aka The Way of Jers, on Twitter. Jers, you want to say hi?
Hi, happy to be here. I think this will be a good time for everybody to get some good information about Brazil.
Yes. Jers kind of represents the very highly mobile digital nomad that spends his time on the 50th story of towers eating steaks. And that's Jers's version of Brazil.
Something like that, yes.
We have Patrick Flood, the founder of LatAm Stocks, covering the stock market in Brazil, lives full-time in Sao Paulo, has been living in Brazil. He's American, has been living in Sao Paulo for a decade now, I believe.
Yeah. What's up, guys? Glad to be here. So I studied abroad. I did a year of my undergrad in Sao Paulo, and then I kind of never left. So I've been living and working in Brazil ever since.
Awesome. We also have Aaron, founder of Brazil Crypto Report. It's the leading news publication for crypto news in English about Brazil. Aaron, what's up?
Hey, gang. Thanks for having me here. Looking forward to this. I've been living in Brazil for about a year now, in Brasilia. I met my wife in Washington, D.C. My wife's Brazilian, but we met in Washington, D.C., and now we live in Brasilia because apparently we have a fondness for centrally planned government cities, I guess. But
Artificial lakes.
Yeah, artificial lakes, indeed. So yeah, excited for this conversation.
Awesome. We also have Stakes is High, kind of zooming in, or I don't know, what do you call it, in the background because he's at the gym, but he's going to pop in and out. Stakes, what's up?
I left the gym. I'm at the club now. They got top pop hits playing.
Good stuff. Stakes, previous podcast guest as well. Everyone here, everyone joining was a previous podcast guest. Some of the episodes are unreleased at the time of this recording, but don't worry, everyone's episode will be released soon enough. Stephen Story is here as well, one of the Brazil OGs. Stephen, are you all set up?
Yeah. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. It's good to be here. How y'all doing?
Doing good. Stephen joined a little bit late in Bahia fashion.
Yeah.
But Stephen's Story, one of the most classic episodes of the My Latin Life podcast, over a year ago, I think now. And we've been meaning to do a round two. And then that was kind of the idea for making a bigger roundtable discussion about Brazil. We're always just trying to do like new things with the podcast a little bit. So this is definitely something new. We have 6 illustrious guests here to talk about Brazil. And I think the only rule for this podcast is we're not going to talk about dating. Okay, because if we do, it's just gonna devolve into destruction very quickly, right?
Mhm.
Um, for the married guys, I think that is a cool angle. Talk, but definitely we're not going to talk about dating.
Fair
um,
point.
but we'll talk about cultural assimilation, living in Brazil, the digital nomad side, the long term expat side, and all the considerations that come along with that. Cool.
Okay.
Do it.
Awesome. And I think everyone's pretty much in different cities, and I think everyone's in Brazil except maybe except Francisco. Where were you at?
Yeah, I'm in Buenos Aires, but originally from Blumenau, South Brazil.
Mhm.
Okay, we got Steven in Bahia, we got Jers in Floripa, Patrick in SP, and Aaron in Brasilia, and then Stakes is probably undisclosed location.
Village by the sea.
Village by the sea. Exactly. Exactly. So how do we kick things off?
You the host, man. It's up to you.
Well, I want to hear from Steven because it has been a while, and Steven always brings
Okay.
the good vibes.
Okay. So we talking about everything but dating, right? So it is summer. Summer is in full swing here in Bahia. I don't know how long everybody has. I know Vance just said how long everybody's been here, but I have been here in Salvador 5 years in January. 2024, January 2024 will be 5 years for me. And I'm getting a bit bored, to be honest with y'all. I picked this city as a place. I was on vacation. I was on vacation in Salvador, and I kind of stayed here. I never went to Rio. I never went to Sao Paulo until 2 or 3 years into being here in Brazil, and like I'm a bit bored now of this whole beach life thing. And I'm like, do I go to Sao Paulo? Do I go to Rio? Or do I start making my way to Europe or back to the States, as opposed to staying here in Bahia? So I don't know if y'all have already went through that or not in y'all's respective cities.
I'll say like in Sao Paulo, you meet a lot of people from like everywhere in Brazil. It's kind of like the New York City. So a lot of like the people in the small towns or the people that are bored with like the slower life, they come to Sao Paulo, like exactly looking for what you just said, something a little more exciting. So
Mhm.
for me, it's definitely the center of everything in Brazil. It's like half of the GDP. So everything that's going on business wise and culturally, all the concerts, everything passed through Sao Paulo. So
Mhm.
it's a cool spot. Like it's a love hate city. I don't know. I'm sure you've been there. You've visited.
Yeah, I've
Yeah, yeah,
been. I've
yeah.
been.
Like it's love hate. Like as long as you get out every once in a while, don't just stay there for 12 months straight, see some nature. But there's a lot to do. I like it for sure.
How long have you been there?
I've been based there for over 10 years. Like that's been home base,
Wow.
but I travel a lot too. Like after 5 or 6 months, if I haven't gotten out of Sao Paulo, I start to go crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's a cool spot to be based out of, but it's not 12 months a year. I wouldn't want to be in Sao Paulo.
I
I
think
dig
one of
that.
the I,
I dig
sorry, I
that.
think one of the bigger things that
Hmm?
Steven's talking about is, do people go abroad and live there forever? Do they get tired? Is the 5 year mark, like uh, a time that most people hit? And I can say I was in Floripa for 5 years and I got tired of it too, especially on the beach. I'll tell you right now, I lived on the beach for 5 years and I don't really care for the beach. It's not that great. So I think at around 5, 6 years, people they dig in, and your first year, you're like, I'm gonna be here forever. This is amazing, and then it wears off the novelty, or you're like, maybe there's a little bit more commerce or nightlife or a little bit more movement somewhere else, wherever that is.
Mm, mm.
That's exactly what I mean. Stakes is high. That's exactly what I mean. I'm glad you hit on that point.
One point I'll
Um,
make.
Do you think that there is something about Florianopolis specifically where, like the size of it in low season, it just, yeah, it kind of gets boring, right? It's not a place that you usually go to in low season because it's going to be cold. You're not going to be going to the beach. The city's not going to be full. Most of the events are in high season, like all the concerts and things going on in general. Whereas I think like Rio,
mhm.
São Paulo have the sufficient scale that you're never going to get bored in Rio, like in terms of, oh, there's nothing to do. I've done everything already. Like it's very hard to reach that level in Rio. Whereas in Floripa, unless you want to hike every single hike that you can possibly find in the island, you probably get bored, especially in the winter months.
I was going to add one thing that I found. Brazil works great for me spending 6 months a year. So you might also be
Mhm.
able to find a balance combining Brazil, combining the lifestyle you have here, the friends you have here with Europe or another place. I feel Brazil gets very intense after about 5, 6 months for me, anyways. So I like the balance of combining it with the tranquility, so to speak, of Europe.
I'll say,
That's what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling that intensity, you know. But for me, like I'm from Alabama, so Alabama and Bahia are very similar in pacing as far as like lifestyle and culture. So it's very similar, but I feel how I feel when I'm in Alabama too long. I'm like, all right, let's go. Come on, like something needs to happen, you know. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a loop here in Salvador. It's like Carnival, rainy season, Fojo, San Joel, and then spring starts, and then summer parties start up again, and it's yeah. I think I gotta. I think Jersey's right. I think I need to start splitting my time up a bit.
Can we talk a bit
You know.
about São João? Because everyone from abroad always talks about Carnival and wants to go to Brazilian Carnival, but almost no one
Yeah,
knows about São João when they're first coming to Brazil, and it's to me
bro.
the best Brazilian party there is.
That's what you know. Again, like being from the South and coming to Bahia, like there's so many similarities for me that like I don't. Does everybody know what San Juan is? Everybody on the call, we all know what San Juan is.
Do
Okay,
you want to
so
explain it for the audience?
yeah, so for those of y'all who don't know what San Juan is, it's funny because in Calgary, Canada, they have something like Stampede for the Canadians that's listening to this. But it's essentially where everybody wears flannel. They're dancing to a Brazilian version of country music with like it's got an accordion and like a triangle and a band behind it. It's actually really fun. Everybody goes out to the countryside, the interior, and they all go out to these small towns and there's huge concerts in these small towns, and everybody drinks this liquor and like you do all these partner dances with these with women and stuff. It's nice. I've done it a couple times already, but again, like if you already done it a bunch of times, it's kind of like the same thing over and over again. But it's without tourists. That's the other thing. There's no gringos there. It's all Brazilian. So it's a completely different vibe, you know.
that's
I think it's a
that's
little more family oriented.
to me, that's like the best
Mhm.
part of so much of Brazil, of just living in Brazil, at least like where I am, I'm in the center regions where it's like very rare to encounter a gringo. I mean, sometimes you have like embassy people here or whatever, but I just get such a thrill out of going to these things and like never encountering gringos. Like I'm just like the only like the only like awkward gringo guy there. Like, I have to like, it forces you to like learn the language, interact with people. It's kind of like I wear it as kind of like a badge of honor. Like I'm gonna go where like no gringo has gone before, in the
It
center of
also
Brazil.
Yeah,
it also kind of weirdly makes you like the center of attention at those things too, because like you're the gringo, and then I'm like, this is my gringo, and like Brazilians are super friendly and outgoing, and they're just gonna come and try and talk to you and ask you questions. They're nice, but then you're like, all right, oh, shit, like I mean, I'm talking, doing these conversations over and over again. And like you can't really just go to a party and just be low key because someone's gonna be like, that's the gringo.
Yeah, you
yeah,
you you can't stand out like a sore thumb, like
Yeah.
irrespective, right?
yeah. Usually, like here in Bahia, like I blend in, but it does get to your point. It does get repetitive. They're like, oh well, you look like a Baiano, but you're not.
It's the
I'm like, well,
same
yeah,
conversation over and over again. It's like, where are you from? I just tell people like I grew up outside New York. Like, New York. It's like, oh, why do you want to live here? It's like I like Brazil. It's like, oh, okay. Why do you like Brazil? It's like 500 times I've done that conversation.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It gets old quick.
yeah.
It gets old really quick. Especially like being here in Bahia where people don't have a lot of opportunity on the job side of things. It's like, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I work at home. Oh, okay. Internet. Yeah, I work on the internet. Yeah. You know, a home office. Yeah, home office. Yeah, that's what I do. And I don't even get to go into my spiel or whatever, but we all have done it. If you're gringo, you've done it. Stacy,
After a
what's up,
certain point,
man?
you have to just start making up stories. So I would make up because you have the same conversation. Why are you in Brazil? We want to go there. It's our dream. Oh, you're from California. Oh, blah blah blah. So boring. So what you say is, yeah, I'm a classic car restorer, and your governor brought me here to restore his private fleet of cars. And then the woman will be like, "Oh, I hate him. He's Bolsonaro, this and that." And then Now you have a perfect first date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
If you
That's a
can't
good
be James
idea.
Bond, just say you're just say you're all the professions out there.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good. 'Cause
Yeah.
I feel like I've
I'd be
had
like, I'm
like
a firefighter.
I've had the same conversation 100 times with thousands of times with Uber drivers, right? They're like, oh, like where are you from? I was like, oh, how could you tell I'm not from here, right? And then they inevitably start asking. It's the same exact conversation over and over again. But I think I'm gonna start making it. Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm James Bond, like I'm a spy for the MI6 or something, and I'm here to spy on Lula or whatever something. I don't know. Just see what they
So,
say.
Steven, can I double down on this getting bored of being an expat
Mhm.
after 5 years or bored of the city? Because I think that's an extremely fascinating topic. Do
Mhm.
you think it's because of the city that you're in, or do you think it's where you're in, maybe in your career, or like what are the factors at play there?
So it's a bunch of things, man. I think one is socioeconomics for one. Uh, Salvador compared to Sao Paulo or Rio, if you're making anything over $3,000 or $4,000, you're essentially $3,000 or $4,000 a month. You're essentially in the same. You're in the same economic stratosphere as everybody else, above $3,000 or $4,000 US per month, and so it's limited things you can do in this city. Like if you're making that kind of money, if you let's say you're making $4,000 US a month, you have the same access to all the clubs and parties and women. For the most part, here in this city, that's not the case in Rio de Janeiro or in Sao Paulo, because it's still people who have much more money than that. So you kind of, for lack of better words, you kind of beat the game really quickly. And then the other part about Bahia, specifically in Salvador, is it's like 700 miles of coastline. So like the thing to do is go to the beach here. But the problem is everywhere is a beach. And so it's the same thing everywhere, but then it's only a few beach clubs, but all the beach clubs only go to a certain level, right? And then like, we're in Salvador, you're on a bay or you're on the Atlantic Ocean side of things. So it's a
Mm,
very similar environment. Either it's really windy or it's really calm. The water's warm everywhere for 100 miles in any direction, right? So it's like just very similar with just a few differences. And then also like because Bahia is not as uh, opportunity rich as other places, uh, everything kind of stays the same. Like there's not a new hotel that got built last year on the coast. There's not a new big club. There's not a new big thing that attracts people.
right.
So it's just kind of like it's like being in a summer camp. It's like staying at summer camp and everybody else goes home. You know, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm at summer camp and everybody, from Sao Paulo and the States, they kind of circle in throughout the year, and I'm here.
It sounds
So
like
that's how it
Steven
is.
went to Brazil, Bahia, for a new challenge, something to conquer, and he's conquered Salvador, and now he's looking for the
Yeah,
next obstacle to overcome.
you're right, bro.
And
That's exactly it.
I also think
Hmm?
that's a common problem when you get outside the tier one cities.
I was thinking the same thing. It's
I
like
think,
it's common to any tier B city, right?
yeah, exactly. I think after a certain time, and I think your time frame is exactly right, like 5 6 years. A while back, I did like 5 6 years where I was pretty much in Medellin, and then I hit that point, and I was like, man, I've got to get out of here. And I still love the city, and I still go back, but I can't live there anymore. I need something more.
Hmm.
I need the excitement, the change, the newness.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's how. Hmm?
what you made about the reaching a certain level of connections, I get it on being, yeah, you should rather go to a tier A city where you're going to have an upper cap. But the thing about stagnation specifically, yeah, that makes more sense in it being in the Northeast, because at least like my experience in the South, I don't live in Brazil, but I go back to Brazil every single year to visit family, tourism, etc. And like in the south, even in the small cities in the coast, like Pissarras, Penha, Bombinhas, etc., every year you go and there's more and more skyscrapers and high-rise buildings, and there's a lot of construction going on there. They're bringing in new parks, bringing in new universities, bringing in a lot of stuff. So it does feel like the feeling that I get when I'm talking with my family over there is like, they're building all these apartments next to my old home that I had this beautiful beach view now, and there's a lot of apartments everywhere. Like it's a feeling of the boomer that is tired of all this growth that is happening around me.
I think we kind of just came to like Jerez's point about like the different regions, right? Like the south of Brazil is a much wealthier area, so like I guess it doesn't surprise me to see that getting built up. But where Steven is, I guess I think it is probably much more stagnant, like he says.
And a lot of that probably has to do with the international tourism too. As far as I know, like where Stephen is, that region gets a lot less of the international
You'd
tourist
be
out. So
you'd
there's
be
less.
surprised how little tourism Brazil gets. I get so much pushback whenever I tweet about the tourist visa because people are furious about it. Because I point out how many tourists Brazil actually gets a year, which is like 6 million, which is like
It's extremely
it's
low.
less than Iran. Like they
Yeah.
don't really have an international tourism industry, right?
And
Like
most of that tourism that comes to Rio de Janeiro, maybe a little bit.
or it's Argentinians coming to Floripa, right? It's not like Americans coming and spending a bunch
Yeah.
of money. It's business tourism to Sao Paulo too, to an extent, but
I tweeted this map like
And
probably a year ago. I wish I could find it again. And it was broken out by state, the number of tourist entries. And once you get to all the other states, kind of in the the middle center and so forth, like Campo Grande and Piauí and all that, it's like 40,000 tourist entries per year,
yeah,
which is
which is like the
it's
crazy people that want to go see like
insane.
crocodiles in the Pantanal, right? Like it's like safari tourism at that point.
yeah, you
It's
get
like
into those
insanely
regions
low.
and like you'll encounter people like if you try talking to them and like they've literally never heard like a language other than Portuguese spoken like in their life. Like even if you're speaking to them in Portuguese with like a gringo accent, they look at you like you're crazy, like you're from another planet or something.
Because like a lot of those places too, where you are, Aaron, are like those weren't even really towns like 2 generations ago, right? Like they went from like some of these like agriculture towns in Mato Grosso and stuff went from like 80,000 people to 1 million in like 50 years. So like they
Yeah,
don't
like
have
all
a
this like Chinese money just started pouring into those regions, and like it's just boomtown central now, right? And
yeah.
those a lot of these interior states too, like there's just no tourism infrastructure for like people that don't speak Portuguese, right? Like I remember I went to when I went to the first time I went to Minas Gerais, to some of the historic colonial cities in Minas Gerais, and I didn't speak very good Portuguese at the time. So we found like this guy who was peddling himself as like an English tour guide, English speaking tour guide. He was like all like bragging about, he had like a sign and everything, business cards. And like this guy's English was so bad that like I had to like talk to him in Portuguese the whole time. My like, you know, just elementary Portuguese was better than his English, but he was like marketing himself as an English tour guide. And it was like there's no way like like my dad would have came with. Like there's no way he would have understood anything of what we were doing. So
Wow.
some of these states just have like no infrastructure for even receiving, like once you get into these interior places, there's just like no English, like, there's just no English proficiency at all, really. So it does make it a little difficult if you're not, at least a
I
little bit
was
accustomed.
spending a fair amount of time in a small city in Minas. I was going there every 3-4 months for a couple of weeks, and literally, I would get into an Uber, and the Uber driver would remember me from 3 months ago. I got to know so many people in the town because they'd never seen a gringo before. So everybody got to know me. Everybody wanted to know why I was there. Quite the
Well,
experience.
even in like I live in Brasilia here, which is like pretty like international city, I guess relatively. It's there's embassies and there's foreigners that come here and whatnot. And I went to a little like pastel restaurant, up the street from my house to go eat the other night, and like started talking to the server, and the guy got so excited because he's never met an American before. And this is like in the center of Brasilia, which is like a pretty like international city. Like, it's not,
Even among the even among the Brazilians, Brasilia gets like a bad tourism rep too, which is kind of funny, right? Like every time a Brazilian's like, "Oh, should I go to Brasilia?" If you ask them, they're like, "No, why would you go there?"
Exactly. Why would you go there? Like,
Right? So, yeah.
do I want to see
it's like
realist architecture? No, I
it's
don't.
like
Why
it's
would I
like
go?
it's the Jetsons meets like 1960s communist architecture, and if you like fuse those
Yeah.
big two together, you get Brasilia basically. But the quality of
Like
life here is
overall,
actually
I think
pretty good.
this is a big advantage of Brazil in general because, like, basically all that we've been talking about the last 5 minutes is just we're talking a lot about like hidden gem cities on Twitter and places where no one knows and they are undiscovered. Basically, everything in Brazil outside of São Paulo, Rio, and one or two neighborhoods in Floripa are hidden gems. There are no foreigners there at all. It's all undiscovered.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information.
I've been here 10 years and I have so many places on my tourism bucket list in Brazil still that I haven't gone to. Like, especially up by where Aaron is, like Boniato, like Mato Grosso is like an up and coming one that looks amazing. Like, I still want to go to the Pantanal. I haven't done that. Like, Belém. I know, Aaron, you said you were going to Belém last time we talked, right?
Yeah. We went to Belém in July actually, which was like,
How was it?
it was wild, man. It was like, it was crazy. And we went to this island that is Ilha do Marajó. It's like that island like right at the mouth of the Amazon. When you get there,
Mm-hmm.
and like there's no like the only form of transportation is just these like motorcycle taxis. So you just have to like hop on the back of this like random. And I was there with like my 9-year-old kid, my
No.
son. so but he just like jumped on this guy's motorbike and like took off, and I was like, all right, well, I guess we're here we go. So but no, it was incredible, man. Belém that was an incredible city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Bahia. Has a lot of different islands here that nobody's been to, and so I've got to see a bunch of those islands over the years. And like I remember, I went to a place, and so being from Alabama, there like I'm gonna keep referencing Alabama. That's where I'm from, but like it's so many parallels. And so I was on an island called Ilha de Maré. Ilha de Maré. It's like a quilombo. I don't know if y'all know what a quilombo is, but it's this small community. And so all these people think that me and my friend are Brazilian. I'm like, no, we're not Brazilian. I'm like, no, you are Brazilian. And like, well, no, we're Americans. We speak English. They're like, no, you don't. What are you talking about? Like, you're a Brazilian. Like, stop playing. And so we started speaking in English. They were like, hey, come here. Hey, he speaks English. What is that? And they're like, hey, say that thing again. And so he started talking in English again, like making a spectacle in the little town, speaking in English, you know? And I had another guy. So I do capoeira. So I was doing capoeira with this guy. And he said, where are you from? I said, I'm American. I'm from the United States. He said, I'm sorry, man. I'm from the interior. I don't know where that is. What are you talking about? What is this place? I didn't really finish school. And I was like,
Wow.
bro, it's like the continent above this continent. Like,
Yeah, like Donald Trump, like Barack Obama,
yeah, like,
these people,
bro, he did not know what an American was. Not that he had never met somebody. He didn't know where our country was. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Wow.
that's Bahia.
That's how I want to be.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have to give you like the Men in Black, like memory wiper.
Right.
Just
Right.
forget the U.S. ever existed.
Bro, it's crazy, man. So it's a. I was out in this city. It's a community. It's like probably 15,000 people. About 3 weeks ago. It's where I go, and they like kill alligator and buffalo and stuff. I know the butcher there, and he likes me or whatever because I usually bring American seasonings, and whenever they do a churrasco, and I'll grill like the American seasonings. And so the guy was like, "Hey man, you talk real funny, but I like you." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm speaking great Portuguese. What do you talk about? Talk funny like." You talk funny. And he's like, nah, man, I don't understand your language that well when you speak in Portuguese, but you're all right with me. And I'm like, is this how far we were moved from the interior and people in the city here in Bahia? It's crazy to experience
Because there is quite a
obviously.
divide in Bahia and probably most of Brazil, right, between the coast and the interior. Francisco, do you think you could speak to that?
Oh, for sure. The lifestyle is completely different, right? I lived most of my life next to the coast, right? So Blumenau is like 1 hour something from the coast. But then my last year while I was living full time in Brazil, I went to Maringá, which is the interior of Paraná, like 9 hours from the coast. And just the overall lifestyle, like how the people live, is completely different, right? When you're in When you're still like 1-2 hours from the coast, the weekend activity is let's go to the beach. Let's go to our either family house on the beach or go visit some friends or rent a place and do stuff by the beach. And whereas in the interior, one downside is you have no beach. You cannot go there, at least not every weekend. But one really cool thing about the interior is that the communities are usually a bit tighter because the weekend activity is let's gather the friends and make a barbecue. So you have a lot more of this basically not wild west, like cowboy culture, you could say. Like the people who you go on Tinder in the interior of Brazil, and the girls are wearing these belts with the huge buckle on and the
Yeah.
and the hats, and you're having barbecues all the time. So it really is a kind of a cowboy culture.
Yeah,
Galoperos.
I
Is that what
agree.
it's called? Is it
Sorry,
called galoperos?
it's like sertanejo, gaúcho,
Sertanejo.
depending on which interior
Gaúcho.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
talking about.
Sataneiro, sataneiro, is that the word? Sataneiro.
Sertanejo.
Sertanejo.
That's like
Mm.
That's what I hear.
the music.
Yeah, I hear a lot here.
Yeah.
So I do want to come back to capoeira as well as samba. I know, Francisco, at some point you were looking at doing samba and kind of like the Brazilian activities that a gringo could maybe look forward to getting involved in, including the music, sertanejo, and so forth. But before we just to kind of like buckle a bit more on Brazil, the theme of Brazil is like the final frontier of Latin America and as kind of its own island in Latin America. If you guys maybe have some more anecdotes about that, and I guess how it feels to be frontiersmen.
I mean, I think one big topic about Brazil that I experience when I'm with friends from abroad that are in the country and I'm showing them around, or recently in my last trip with my girlfriend, when you're in Colombia, everything is so close, right? You're like 2 hours away from Caribbean, Pacific, big city, mountains, etc. Whereas in Brazil, the distances feel much more real, right? We did a road trip from Maringá, interior of Paraná, to the coastline in Brazil, and we drove for 10 hours straight, and then you look in the map and it's this, right? There's like small line. You basically didn't even move. I think
Mhm.
that is an aspect to traveling and living in Brazil. It's just the distances are much more real. Okay, although like for the Americans, I guess it's the same, but especially if people are used to Europe or Colombia or these smaller countries, it does feel much more just huge.
Like I've
It
always
is
found
big,
it.
man.
I've always found it really interesting how, and I would appreciate others' perspectives on this too. But it feels almost like Brazilians, like they very strongly like don't like being associated with like Spanish Latin America. Like they view themselves as almost like this separate, like superior civilization that's like more connected with like European society. And maybe it goes back to like the Dom Pedro era, like of the emperor who was very like this cultured, like European educated.
Well, I
But
think
it's
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 because
like,
it's sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say it's the only real melting pot in Latin America, right? Like you look at like the other countries, and it's mostly Spanish, like some Italian immigration, Argentina, but Brazil has the largest expat community of Lebanese, Syrian, Japanese. Like where Francisco's from is the second largest Oktoberfest in the world outside of Germany. So there's all these different cultures, like in Bahia too, like a lot of the African cultures there too. So like a lot of them have absolutely nothing to do with Spanish speaking Latin America, right? Like if you're like a third generation Japanese in Sao Paulo, what's the hell do you care about Peru, right? Like you don't feel any connection to that culture really. So I think they feel that way rightfully in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think the parallel I see is like with the United States and Europe, right? So like we don't care about Europe as Americans. Fuck Europe, that's how we feel essentially. Like we're not trying to speak Spanish or French or Italian or any of that in the United States. And Brazilians are the same way. I see like as much as they make fun of us or are critical about Norte Americanos, as critical as they are, they do the same things we do. They don't even play Spanish music on the radio. They don't here in Salvador. There are no. It's like There might be a Mexican restaurant here. That's it. Colombia's right next door. There are no Colombian restaurants on this side of the country that I've seen, or Venezuelan or Argentina. They don't even talk about it, you know. And so for everybody to be so close to them, there's very little influence of the rest of South America, for that matter, on what I see in Brazil.
But the interesting thing to your point is, even though they are sort of their own island, I find the Brazilian people to be much more accepting of foreigners and other cultures than the other Latin American countries. Like especially now that you have a lot of the digital nomads in places like Colombia and Mexico, you're starting to get a lot of anti-gringo sentiment. I don't see that or feel that at all in Brazil. Like even the word gringo doesn't have the negative connotation here that it has in the other countries.
Well, I also think it's because there's not that many of us.
True.
True.
You know, like in my city, I've been here 5 years. It might be 100 of us that are living here full time, maybe. And I'm just being like really, generous with that. But it's probably more like 50 of us are staying here year round. That's of all age groups.
Yeah.
And it's
You
so
know?
big too, right? Like Francisco said, we're spread out. So like, whereas in like, I feel like in Colombia, all the gringos pretty much go to Medellin, with some in Bogota, maybe a few in Cartagena. But in Brazil, like you're not going to notice even if there's 10,000 in Sao Paulo, like you might not run into them. And then there might be another 5,000 in Rio, and like you won't really notice them because it's so big and you can blend in.
Yeah.
And you also can't really pick them out by looks either. Like in Colombia, I stand out like a sore thumb. Like Brazil has the most counterfeited passport in the world because you can pretty much just put any picture on a Brazilian passport and it's believable.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And that's also one of the reasons why I came to Brazil as opposed to going to Colombia. I was like, I can blend in Brazil. I'll just do that before I, go to Colombia or Mexico City or something like that. And I think that, you know, there's some xenophobia there, and there's probably some racism that goes along with that as people look at like, hey, we don't want gringos here. Like in, for example, Mexico City, there's a big sentiment of that. It's a growing sentiment of gringo hate, and it's the same thing in Argentina, right? In Buenos Aires, am I right, Francisco?
I haven't seen too much of it still. I think they're a bit more focused on their own problems, at least for the upcoming weeks. Like everything that I'm seeing is just people handing stuff against Milei. It's the it's the current thing.
Yeah, I see it on the internet more. I guess I see it more online, but I think it's also because it's not us, but it's somebody else that kind of
You
riles
know,
up
I
the.
did hear people like complaining about gentrification and that like the prices are becoming inaccessible for the locals, etc. But at least at the moment, the big issue seems to be the elections.
In Argentina.
Yeah,
When is elections there?
Sunday actually.
Finally, I'm glad. I think the other guy's gonna win. The left guy. I don't think the guy on the right is gonna win. I don't know their names. I forgot their names.
That will
Yeah.
benefit Brazil, as I have a couple of Brazilian friends here who are studying for free in university and paying very little rent and everything, because
We're gonna
university is
date
free
ourselves
even
though,
for
'cause
foreigners.
it's not
Yeah, you
after.
should explain that because that's like an arbitrage that a lot of Brazilians do, especially like for the more expensive schools like med school that are
Uh-huh.
really, really difficult to get into the public things. They'll just go to Argentina and go to school for free.
Bolivia,
That's crazy,
Paraguay.
man.
Yeah, and
How
then they
does
just
that
kind of
work? How does that work?
you literally just sign up at a university and then
And that's it. You're done.
just go. I mean, you might have to fill out some forms and stuff like an entrance exam. Maybe there might be a sign up fee. I don't know the full details, but pretty much anyone gets in if you want to go, and then you can literally just get your degree and come back and make 20 times what you would make in Argentina working as a doctor in Brazil.
Yeah, and
Wow.
that's a big thing about Brazilian like superior high how do you say like superior education, high level education anyway.
Higher education.
The private universities they're good and they're not like hard to get in, but they're expensive for Brazilian standards compared to what most people here make. They are quite expensive. It's cheaper to go to a university in Europe as a non European and pay the fees there. It's cheaper than the top private universities in Brazil. At the same time, the public universities, which are the ones that are for free, are extremely competitive. When I was studying, like doing my last year of high school in Brazil, I like did the test for the State University of Maringá. it was about like 350 candidates per spot in medicine. I applied for economics, which had like 4 people per spot, but like medicine, architecture, law, the big ones are hyper competitive. So a lot of my classmates from Paraná, they are in Paraguay and Argentina. They studied over there. It's the
One of
alternative.
one of the things I mean, this may be like a Brasilia feature because it's the capital city, the government city, but like the extent to which like people like devote their lives to studying for these like concursos to be able to like get like government jobs, like I just found it to be like a total like shocker, right? Like
Yeah,
people will
it's
like it's I was just like, wow, like people are like they put like talk about like putting all your eggs in one basket kind of thing. They're like, I'm gonna study for this test for 7 years so I can get this government job that'll pay me like 10,000 reais a month for the rest of my life or something.
Yeah,
It's
they
just
do that
very
both
extreme.
for entering university. Like I know people who they have these yearly or bi-yearly tests to get into university, and there's people who study for like 3 years straight to get into a Brazilian university, right? It's 3 years of your life just studying for the test, so you can fit all the questions that get in. And same thing for these jobs, right? Like for being a police delegate or like an IRS inspector, these kinds of things. Like once you get the job, you have great benefits, a very high level salary for local standards, and you're basically unfireable. So people pay courses and they pay mentorships and they do like all of these high level Asian style studying tricks to see if they can pass. It's quite
And I
depressing.
think, for the relevance here, maybe for the audience listening to this, because they're not Brazilian studying. So, but the way they would care is if you are spending time in Buenos Aires, in Asuncion, in La Paz, Bolivia, any of the countries surrounding Brazil, you will meet Brazilians living abroad. There will be huge student communities in these countries. There will be capoeira schools. I'm sure there's a ton of capoeira schools in Buenos
Mhm.
Aires, right? And so even if you only want to come to Brazil for a couple of years, you don't want to make it your life, but you want to, learn the language, do the beach thing, whatever, and eventually move on, you'll be able to use that skill of the Portuguese language and have that cultural community that you can connect with in other cities in Latin America, as well as, of course, in Portugal.
Yeah, we could circle back to the Brazilian student visa too, because while the private universities are expensive for Brazilians, it's actually quite affordable compared to U.S. universities, like way cheaper. And the
Mm-hmm.
student visa is a really straightforward visa. It gives you residency temporary, so you'll be able to open a bank account and everything. You'll be able to get an internship and paid internship with a Brazilian company if you want to. And I had a friend that did it, and he just did Portuguese as a second language at PUC, Pontifical Universidade Católica in Sao Paulo, and it was like, I don't know, $1,000 to $2,000 for the semester, and then it came with the visa, and he also got Portuguese classes. So like if you actually want to learn Portuguese, you can go to the classes at a university and take Portuguese, and you get the visa. And if you sign up,
Is this a master's program?
no, it's just anybody can do it.
Undergrad? Because you wouldn't send an 18-year-old kid to Brazil and be like, it's cheaper, go down
I,
there, have fun.
No.
I'd show
Not
up when I
really.
was
Maybe a master's or maybe a semester
no,
abroad, right?
like no, you can do this when you're 40.
Okay.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's just a program that they offer through, like, you don't even have to be a student. He wasn't a student
Right.
there. He already had his degree. He just came
Right.
down, wanted to stay in Brazil, and instead of having to do the tourist visa every 90
I
days,
see.
he
I
got a
see.
letter from them. All you need, it's basically the same as what's the standard visa process, but you just need a letter from the university saying you're enrolled.
You
And if
just
you
it just has to be a university. I forget what the minimum number of hours is.
yeah, exactly. It's by the number of hours, and the university will know exactly what it is. And some are better priced than others, but it's a reasonable way to get a longer term visa to Brazil, and it comes with a class basically.
Yeah, good alternative to the digital nomad visa, potentially.
And
But you could do
the
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 study abroad too.
tourist visa window has been shrunk under Lula recently, right? He cut it from like 180 days to 90 days. I thought I saw something about that recently.
I
You
think
guys
they
follow that?
postponed it a bit, though, right?
Did
Or
they?
what's up with
It's
that?
been postponed to January. It was supposed to start last month and it didn't. But in my experience, as of late, this whole visa thing is a joke right now. I had a friend that did 180 days here already this year, left for a month, came back. no visa, and went straight through at
They
customs.
have no idea. Yeah, like they
Yeah,
have no idea.
they don't know
They do a
anything. I don't know
very
how they
good
keep
job.
me
I
up
had
to date.
this. Yeah, yeah. It's
This is Jer's area of expertise.
Yeah, the immigration in Brazil does an exceptionally bad job of tracking the days. So it's not that you should recommend it because
No,
somebody could be that one person that gets the guy having a bad day that actually looks at it. But 9 out of 10 times, yeah, you're just going to go right through.
no.
I've asked two. I've asked on the same visa two different people on the same day how many days I had left, and they gave me different answers.
Yeah,
Looking at the same
they don't.
computer, like
And
I've seen people.
And
My bad. My
I was
bad.
just going to say
Keep
with the
going.
new visa, so they postponed that to January, which is Americans, Canadians now need to pay again. And it's still unclear if that can be done digitally or you're actually going to have to go to the embassy or consulate like you used to have to do. But as far as I know, it's still, they'll give you the 90 days once you pay and enter, and then you can go to the police and you can extend it for an additional 90 days. So it is still the 180 days that you can get with a single visa.
But I find that the issue is like they don't enforce it at the border. They enforce it at the Policia Federal afterwards, and you have to pay like a boleto or a multa, you know what I'm saying, fine or whatever. And also, like, it's so many discrepancies. I was supposed to get a 10,000 reais fine. I get to the Policia Federal, and they were like, "Oh yeah, just pay us 1,700 reais now."
dude,
Like,
I got the same thing. Were you there during COVID when they closed
yeah,
all the stuff? Yeah. On my way out too,
yeah,
they gave me a 10,000 real fine. I said to my lawyer, and like we had to process the federal police or whatever. I don't know what he did, but he came back one day and said, "No, you don't owe him anything." So those guys, they were. I think they were just giving it to people honestly to see who would pay. I think like
yeah.
because they closed it and they were just like, "Let's see who we can get some money from."
But I got two of those.
You got two. I thought
That,
10,000 was the legal limit. And the worst part was you couldn't pay till you came back. So you had to wait for you. And it was accumulating interest at like 13.5%.
yeah, yeah.
So like you
But
were,
they have times I got the little piece of paper is like, hey, give us 10,000 reais, and I'm 20,000 in now plus interest, and they just told me like, yeah, pay us this 1,700 now, and forget about the rest. And so now I've been, for lack of, I just don't, I have no fear of the border patrol of Brazil anymore because of these things, because like there's no real rules. I saw a guy do 5 years straight here and then go to the States for a week, come back, no problem, you know,
dude.
with no visa,
Yeah, and
no nothing.
like I had it out with them too. Like I was like I wouldn't sign the paper going through immigration because like I knew what the law was. Like they postponed the stuff. And, like I had permanent residency. Like I had a process open to get my permanent residency. Here's my protocol number. And they're like, no. Like, let me talk to your boss. And I'm like, no. And like this was also like a 250-pound woman who had like shaved eyebrows and she repainted them like bright purple. And I was like, can I please talk to someone serious? No, no.
Yeah, I haven't taken this serious in a
That's
long
crazy.
time.
They gave you two though, because I thought like the legal limit was actually like I don't think like by law it can be more than 10,000. I think that's the max fine. So I don't know what they
Dog,
tried to just give you the max fine twice to see if you give it to them.
I never paid. I didn't pay either one. I think like I've like this is not good. Don't and anybody watching this don't listen to this stuff. I just have not been a Brazilian passport visa respecter in my time here, and I haven't gotten in trouble. So I'm like, it's been 5 years. I've always overstayed. I've only had to pay one time out of all the times I overstayed. I've been on here on regular tourist visas for a year. I've done nomad visas. I've done it all, and now I'm doing a permanent residency situation. And even that, they didn't know how to get started for my digital nomad. Because with a digital nomad visa, you're supposed to have the ability to do an extension for 1 year. I go to extend my nomad visa, and they're like, "No, just do the permanent residency now." I'm like, "What? I want to do a nomad one more time." No, yeah, that's over for you.
They sort of make it up as
So
they go along.
That's exactly it. That is the phrase. Like
yeah,
Yeah, that is
yeah,
basically the entirety of Brazil. If you're trying to start a business or invest, it's the exact same scenario, but for the taxes, right? So, oh, what do I have to pay? I don't know, right? It's what are the regulations? I don't know. Like, no one really knows. Like, you have some guidelines, you have some theoreticals, but on practice, there's a lot of things that just pop up, and you have to kind of deal with them as they come along.
Yeah. I had one too. Like I've had 6, 7 visas in total, counting like the student visas since I've been in Brazil. And I had one where like on my first student visa, they always ask you like the name of your parents, right? Like, and I wrote one with my dad's like middle initial, and I guess one I didn't. So like I get there and I go with all the paperwork, and they're like, well, on this document it has the middle initial, and this one doesn't. And the girl looks at me and goes, well, who's your father? And I got the same guy my whole life, man. I only got one. And she's like, no, 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 no. So I had to like take it to another office on Consolação, like not the federal police in Lapa anymore. And like they tell me, it's like, no, you need to provide a document from the United States saying that your father legally changed his name. And I was like, but he didn't. So how am I going to get that? Finally, I was just like, my lawyer gets another 3 hours to bill for or whatever. And I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And like, he had to, I don't know, do the Brazilian thing where he calls people and makes it better. I don't know.
And
don't know how it got resolved. Eventually, I got the visa. I have no idea how that got resolved. Eventually, they just gave up on it.
And don't forget about the expiring birth certificates in Brazil.
Oh yeah,
the apostille.
No, the actual birth certificate expires, so you have to get a new birth certificate every 6 months, and then you have to get it apostilled, and then you actually have to have the apostille verified. So it's the most.
The apostille was new. I didn't have to do that for like the first 5. The most recent one I did, which was miserable because it was taking like 10 weeks in the U.S.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but also like if you just throw a little money around, it makes everything go a lot better. In my experience,
just have a lawyer you like, and yeah.
Because my lawyer was like, "Yeah, man, we can, if you give me another 400 highs, we can make this go much faster. If we just get it to my friend over here." I'm like, "Look, dude, whatever you gotta do, let's just do it that way, because this is ridiculous. However we're doing it." And so I have found that has been my way through a lot of bureaucracy here. If you want American level service, American level bureaucracy, spend an extra 500 reais. And talk to somebody's cousin or ex-wife or whoever, so you can pay them off and get the ball rolling with whatever paperwork you gotta get done. Because it's ridiculous here, at least in Bahia. I don't know about everybody else, but it's really crazy. Has anybody sued anybody in this country or been a part of a lawsuit?
I mean,
luckily not.
No. Just that 10,000 real fine we talked about, the federal police. I think I don't know what he technically did, but I appealed it, so that was like the only lawsuit I ever had.
Yeah, well, just an FYI, Brazilians like to sue. Yeah. They love suing.
It's like it might be like per capita the most labor litigation in the world. Like any company's balance sheet, you'll see they have a provision for like if they fire someone, they basically guaranteed to get a settlement or sue. Like the labor laws in Brazil are really rough on companies. Like it's hard to hire people. It's risky, I should say. Like you pay 100% of the salary in taxes and stuff, like pension benefits.
Yeah, it's also very hard to fire people, right? You have like if there's any issue, there's a separate judiciary system for labor disputes. You have the Justiça do Trabalho, which is like a separate separate court just for labor cases, and they're like 95% in favor of
their whole existence is to get money out of the company to give it to them, right? Otherwise they wouldn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah. Brazil usually makes more sense. Like even the local Brazilians, they do it a lot where they work outside of like legal employment boundaries. They're using a CNPJ, like they're using a local micro company to do their work. Right, it's a lot of people have in their contract that they're not a CLT, which is an employee, but they're rather a CNPJ or a contractor, and that way there's less taxes, less red tape, etc. And that is one thing that Lula is trying to currently undo, right? Like the labor reform that we had in the past that allowed people to do stuff through a local company instead of through a non-local company instead of being an employee. Lula wants to undo that, so everyone has to be a registered employee with benefits and the social security and everything else.
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about BitRefill. BitRefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amount so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
Yeah, I've worked
But
as a Peixota for like 10 years. The only way I've ever made money in Brazil. Like I've never been a formal employee. And it's just you have to have a good accountant, but it's way easier. I couldn't imagine having to get like they actually have a physical book, like a labor book that you're supposed to get signed by the companies, right? Like a little labor passport that your employee's supposed to sign. And then they have these things that look like hand sanitizer machines at some companies, like all I've been to, where they bater ponto, where they still I guess check in, like it's their little shift card to track the hours.
yeah,
Like the Flintstones.
Yeah.
yeah, no, literally, man. But what I find though is like, I am an entrepreneur, but my business is in the United States, and I'm always asked like, "Hey, man, you should invest in Brazil. You should invest in Brazil." I'm like, y'all are gonna screw me if I open something here on the taxes. I can't hire and fire at the same pace that I do in the States. It's no reason for me to start a business here or invest in business here in Brazil. And I don't see how businesses are able to be profitable in this country based on bureaucracy. Like, if I can get sued by everybody who works for me, why hire anybody? You know?
It's definitely a different relationship with employees. Like it's definitely more of a conflict. So like business owners are always they like dividends, right? Like they want to take the money out of the company and put it somewhere else where it's protected rather than reinvest it and hire more people. Right? So like you'll see them just take a dividend and buy land and not do anything with it, right? Like they'll just hold the land because at least the employee can't come after the land. Or they can't come after a different real estate investment. So yeah, it hampers growth for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and this is obviously based around Brazilian politics, and we all have lived here long enough that we kind of have a better understanding. But like, I find that because of how favorable it is for employees, it hampers foreign investment, and it takes away the entrepreneurial spirit that people naturally have. And so nobody, either they're going to just sell, like they'll be a micro entrepreneur and they'll do like a one person business, or they just work for somebody else. But in the States, it's not like that. Now, granted, obviously we live in the United States and we're from there, and it's super easy to make money there. But I think Brazil could do that too if they just loosen up their bureaucracy a bit.
Yeah, it's a very unique phenomenon that like, I mean, I started noticing this like the first time I came here, maybe like, 10, 11 years ago, where like it's a very entrepreneurial culture, but like the entrepreneurial spirit doesn't really rise above like the hua, like the street level. Like you pull up at a stoplight, there's guys trying to like sell you like pasoquitas and like strawberries and whatever. And you're like, wow, like these people are really hustling. Like they're trying to sell you everything, even like the homeless people will come and try to sell you like little balinhas or whatever. But then like you go to like any other like just sort of random store or like agency or something, and you're like, wow, like the service is like terrible here. like nobody even acknowledges like that I'm even here as a customer wanting to spend money. It's like there's this entrepreneurial spirit, but it like it's just like only on like the street level almost. Like it doesn't really rise above that in my view, my perception here.
You also have a lot of what I'd call sort of informal business here. So sort of small businesses, maybe it's more than one person, but the people are all hired informally. The business in a lot of cases is paying little to no taxes, and it's just not structured as a formal business like we'd think coming from the United States. And they have to do that to be able to survive as a business because as you said, the labor taxes are 100%. If they were literally paying every one of the taxes that the business was supposed to pay, it would be absolutely impossible for the business to make any money.
Well, that's true. Like it is important to give a bit of a sense of comparison on the taxes because like especially a lot of people coming from Europe. Like I deal with the opposite case of Brazilians going to Europe, and a lot of these guys who are earning a great amount of money for a self-employed, or who are mid-sized entrepreneurs, they're paying like 5 to 15% tax, like with the simplified regime, with the presumed profit regimes. There's a couple different tax regimes here, and when I tell them that, like, yeah, if you want to go to Portugal, your top rate is going to be 48%, or your business, like the minimum you're going to pay on the profits is going to be like 21. Oh, you want to go to Spain? Good luck with that. So, while there are very high labor costs, specifically, like the labor part is a complete disaster if you're hiring someone as a CLT. There's a certain playing room if you're a small to mid-sized business in these like smaller regimes. The bad thing is that the simplified regime ends at like $900,000 turnover a year, so it's really only if you're under that. And then if you're like a very, very big company, yeah, then you can negotiate a tax exemption, directly with the state government or the municipal government, like these big car manufacturers do. But everything in between gets squeezed out, right? Like if you're very big, you're in one of the free trade zones, or you're negotiating directly with the politicians. If you're very small, or small enough, it's still better than Europe, better than a lot of the developed world in terms of taxes. But the middle gets completely flatlined.
Yeah, I agree with that. For sure.
But they're doing it at the middle is how you grow a country, right? That's how a country is grown out. That's how you build out a culture, the middle class that we have in the United States. If you can't build that out, you're going to continue to see abject poverty, extreme wealth disparity, and the rich going to keep getting richer, and nobody else gets to enjoy that, right? Because, like you said, if they had to pull dividends out, they can't even reinvest to increase salary because they're going to pay more
Yeah,
on tax.
but if you leave it, but like, think of it, if it was your money, would you leave it there if it's just like a honeypot for your employees that are going to try and get fired and sue you? Like, of course you're going to take the dividend, right? Show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. It's like, of course they're going to take that money out.
Yeah, if you're going to talk to incentives, the dividends are not taxed in Brazil. That is a big thing about
Exactly. And that money's also tax free out of the company, right? Even if you want to pay yourself a salary, a pro labore, as the owner of the company, you pay a little tax on it. It's a lower rate than what you would pay as an employee, but like you can just take the dividend out tax free.
Oh no, it's not. Yeah, that sucks. I don't want to get too. I feel strongly about these things because I am an entrepreneur and I get asked a lot about these buy-ins, like, "Hey, please invest. Please invest, please invest, please invest." And I'm
Buy a
like,
condo.
I'll say
no.
this: the MEs, the micro empresa structure, where I think it's up to like 5,000 reais a month, is pretty much just like tax free, or they pay like 100 reais a month in taxes. But if you pay it for 2 years, you start to get pension benefits, like their Social Security, which isn't a bad structure for the guys on the streets. Like if they formalize and they pay like an 80 reais, 90 reais tax a month, and then they get pension benefits in return. Like that's not bad, right? On $1,000 a month, you're paying $10, $20 in taxes. It's not that bad. And if you have another one, you can just open a second structure, right? Like with your wife's.
This might be a little boring for the guys with the minutia with the taxes, for the audience. But I do have one question. Has anyone bought land in Brazil? Has anyone bought a condo, anything like that?
Airbnb.
I have bought property here. In the last year, I bought a small property in Minas, and a number of years ago, I bought a condominium in Rio. Did you have a specific question about buying property, or
How'd
just
it
in
go?
spirit? Yeah. So to the, I think they're phenomenal. If you're doing it like as an Airbnb, they're really good investments in Brazil, specifically if you're purchasing smaller units. The cash flow on them is as good or better than anywhere else I know. And again, like we were talking about at the beginning, that goes to the poor tourist infrastructure that they have in most of Brazil. If you purchase, even in Sao Paulo, that does have somewhat of a international tourism industry, there just aren't enough hotel rooms. There are not enough units of international standards. So they design these buildings. They call them kitnets. You buy, they're like 25 to 35 meters, so very small units. It's
Mhm.
basically like a hotel room with a kitchen and small kitchen. And if you buy a
I
new
missed a
one,
lot
it's
of what you guys were
literally just
talking
an
about. So
empty
I don't know if
shell.
you're in
So
the
you
economy
design
and in
it, you put the kitchen
the
sink,
inner
the
workings of
cabinet,
how Brazil
everything
works.
in,
But can I just
and
ask
it's
why
pretty
Airbnbs
easy
in
if you know what
Brazil
you're
are by
doing,
far
and
the
you can
worst
find good properties at
actual
reasonable
setups?
prices
It's all this
to
kitchenette.
get a
It's a
good
little
return,
studio.
15,
Really, it's 30
20%,
square
if you know
meters.
how to
You
manage
go
it,
anywhere else, you go to Mexico, you
which
go
is
to
hard to
Colombia,
do
you got a
with
loft, a
Airbnbs.
balcony, privacy, and they don't know how to take photos. Sorry if I don't mean to hijack this at all, but
Dude.
A lot of it, a lot
No,
of
you're right.
a lot of it has to do with because they don't have the international tourism to the extent these other countries do. They're gearing the Airbnbs to the local Brazilian consumer, and the standard that's expected is just much lower in general. Like I think a lot of Brazilians before Airbnb got popular here a few years ago, they would rent. They called them sitios, and they were literally just. We think of them as like sort of these dirty houses with nothing, and people would literally have to bring their own sheets, their own towels, everything. So as they transitioned to Airbnbs, there are no standards. They just yeah, it's crazy because that's one of the big problems I think with traveling in Brazil. It's very difficult because they're very limited luxury hotels, 5-star hotels, and the Airbnbs just are simply not up to par.
Just to give the reference here, like the equivalent of a sítio in Brazil would be a finca, I guess, in Colombia
In
and
Colombia.
Mm.
these other places. But
But
like, I will say that it has gotten better with the Airbnbs. At least this year, when I went back, I have seen more of these professional listings of like these managers that now have like 8 Airbnbs, and they have like, the description is it's very good. The pictures
no, that's going to be
are getting
the heavily
better. They have a
tourist,
person to
the
go
more
bring in the
industrialized
sheets,
cities.
etc.
Because I
Like,
agree, I'm looking at
I'm not
Blumenau and
saying it's
Floripa
wow
all the time,
fantastic, like
and yeah, there
the
are
best,
like
but
managers
it
who
has
see the
gotten
opportunity
better
and there's high
with
tourism,
time
so
in terms
they
of having
get
professional
8 units or
listings.
whatever,
are you finding
and
I
they
agree.
look good.
in all the
But
cities,
I guess my
not
underlying
not just
issue
like Sao
is
Paulo and
the
Rio, but in the
build. So
smaller
yeah, you can buy all this property, and the
Brazilian
cost to
towns?
build or the
I
Are you
saw
cost
it
to
in
finding?
make
Floripa too,
sense,
for example.
but they're
So,
so
but
bare
outside of those,
bones. Like the apartments, like I've seen your apartments, Stephen. Like from whatever you posted online, you have an actual build. You got built-in bookcases. I can see. You know what I mean? Your kitchen is like not something that you bought at like the corner hardware store, and that kind of thing it drives me nuts, right? Even in like a 12 foot a 12-story building in um, whatever highly tourist city, it's going to be hard to find like something that really
Mhm.
meets an exceptional
Yeah.
expectations. And I guess that's the quaintness of Brazil. That's why no
Yeah.
tourists go there, and that's why we
Okay.
all love it, right?
Yeah. Well, right. Well, I will say, like, I left the Airbnb situation 2 years ago during the pandemic. I went on and got into a lease. I don't know if y'all lease or not, but I was like, enough. I found that if you go ahead and lease something here, at least in Salvador, you can get much better quality than anything that's on Airbnb. You're not getting anything like this. And me in the States is how we talked about our place before. Vance as well. You've seen my place. I'm not going to sell it here, but it's way better than anything you'll see in the city that you'll see on Airbnb just because, uh, yeah, they don't care about tourists enough to give them the best apartments or the best views or
They think they'll
the
wreck
best of
it,
I
I
anything.
did
guess.
I did the lease when I first came to Brazil. But like my problem with it was the contracts. They always wanted a long-term contracts. They would try and sign you for like a full year. And if you were going to go lower, like some of the flats would go 3 months, but then they jack the price up. And they would also still ask for like 1 or 2 months security deposit
1
up front
year.
of rent.
Where do you find that,
And
man? They
like
get me
after
for
2 times, they're just
3-year
not getting
leases.
that back
they're
because when you go to check out,
they're-
the guy comes and goes, "Oh no, I need to
Yeah.
paint this," and dude, like. And then you also like
Yeah,
I still had the hassle
or you
like
pay
the
a
electric
full
bill was my
year
responsibility,
deposit.
so like I would have to go and pay boletos and stuff, and like on the ones in Sao Paulo that I rented. So I like Airbnb just because I just pay one price with my credit card and I'm done.
10 years in, and
Oh yeah, oh no, 1 year, yeah. Like no, some of them are 30
That's
months.
what I was just going
right?
to say. It's the typical Brazil lease is 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. So like in Sao Paulo, some of the companies that specialize in flats back in this was 2013, 2014 would do a year and you could get them down to like 3 months. But then they just, if it's 5,000 a month for a year, that just goes to 7,000 for 3 months. They just jack the price up on you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
the standard lease is what, 30 months, I think. 30.
it's 30 months with 12 months locked in, and then after that, you're essentially month to month for the next 24 months.
Okay.
You know,
With a
I'm on
with the security deposit too, like you got to pay them something up front, right?
Well, what I did was I didn't have a Fiador, so I just paid up
Cash.
I paid up 6 months up front. I paid up 6 months up front because it was a really nice apartment and it was a lot of competition to get it. So I was like, "Fuck this! I want this
That was like
spot."
6 months rent, right? So like you just didn't pay for the next 6 months. Okay. No, like,
No,
what I
it was
okay, good.
what it was 3 months of rent and then a 3 month security deposit.
Okay, which you would have which you should get back when you.
Yeah, I'll get that back. I did something similar to that on my first apartment that I got a lease on, and I had a really good landlord. He was on top of it. He was a great dentist, and so like I didn't. I think what we did with my security deposit was I think we just applied it towards rent. But whatever it was, I got my money back on it because I took care of the house, so it was all good.
Can I like pose a new question to the group? I'm really interested to get your thoughts on like crime and public safety. Because it's every time I tell people like I'm in Brazil, people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's not safe there."
There's
But
always
like
a reply guy.
I've spent like 2 years of my life here. I've never had any single issue with like crime or feeling threatened or anything like that. But granted, I'm in a fairly safe space or neighborhood, but I would love to get.
I've been in Sao Paulo 10 years and never had a problem. And like you're right, like on Twitter or LinkedIn, and there's always a reply guy. It's like, but it's so dangerous. Always.
Well, it is dangerous in the regard if you were at all places all the time. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's not dangerous in that nice area that you're in. It's not dangerous if you're walking around in the middle of the day. Things start getting dangerous when drugs or alcohol are involved. You're going out all times of day and night. You're going to a bunch of neighborhoods you shouldn't be in the first place. Looking for drugs, stuff like that. And then also just not paying attention. I find a lot of people, specifically Americans, that get robbed or anything like that, they really believe they're in Disneyland. They're at Disneyland or something, and they don't understand that thing in their hand is worth $5,000, and they just walk around just kind of like, we all know Americans and how they act out here. So I find that, they'd be like, "Yeah, man, I got robbed, man." I was like, "What happened?" He's like, "Man, he robbed me for my gold chain." Why did you have a gold chain on? Do you not understand the currency exchange rate? If it costs you $2,000, that's 10,000 reais. 10,000 reais is 8 months of rent for somebody. It might be 8 months of salary for them. And so you can't just do that. But, in Salvador, I will say it's pretty crazy out here. I've seen some stuff. I've seen people get robbed with my own two eyes. I've seen people get shot with my own two eyes. I've seen some violent stuff happen, but as far as me getting robbed, that's never happened. It's never even came close to happening. A lot of women I know have been robbed. Like all the women I know in this city have been robbed at some point or another. A lot of people I know have been pickpocketed or they've been robbed at gunpoint or something like that.
You do. I will say you do have to be careful in the cities like Sao Paulo and Rio with the cell phones.
Yeah.
I mean, I know better. I've been doing this for years. A few years ago, I was walking down Paulista in Sao Paulo in the day. I keep my phone in the pocket. I never have my phone out, and I needed to look at it, Google Maps, for a minute, and that's all it took. I was standing on the corner at a light. Some iFoodie guy
I think that
drove
there's
by on the
an
motorcycle,
over
didn't
caution.
even touch me, just grabbed the phone.
I've gone to
I was like,
places
yep,
in
I knew
Brazil,
better.
and someone's like, "Dude, don't
But
go there. It's so
you just got to
dangerous."
use common sense,
But
and you got to be careful.
we're in the
And
dangerous.
Mhm.
We're on
I
the
think somebody, I don't know who said it,
whatever.
but it's good advice.
Let me just
Be
say,
conscious
those
with like the
reply
drugs
guys
and
that are saying
alcohol,
places are dangerous.
because when you
That's
hear
me.
about really
I've
bad
never
things
had been a
happening to
victim of
people,
violence.
they
I've
were
never had anything bad
usually
happen to
doing
me.
something
But
they
if you
probably shouldn't have
drop
been
a
doing.
city that I'm fond of,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell everyone in that thread that it's a dangerous place and they should not go there. Just FYI. Oh yeah, dude, bro. That's where the girls have AIDS, and and Joao is looking for an iPhone is worth killing over. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Forever, forever. It's still going on. It's
Ha.
still going on.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're the guy that's scaring everybody about Floripa.
Yeah, the
Yeah. Yo, we trolled Twitter for like 6 months off of that, Stakes. Me and you did this for a while. Yeah, yeah, man. I'm big on it, but I would say I would rather tell somebody a place is dangerous and they come with their eyes open than to say that they're going to be okay and something bad happens to them. Because I think for foreigners, they take it's safe as being very literal, and they'll just go everywhere doing everything. And
I don't think that
I'm
any of these
like,
places
yo, you're
are
stupid, man. Like you're
overly
really going to get
dangerous.
yourself
Sure,
hurt
don't
out
go to the
here.
murder capitals
And
of the world or whatever, but
so
if you're an
far that
American
hasn't
and you
happened. I
go
haven't
to
seen it happen to
Paris,
somebody I
you
knew
go to
personally,
Barcelona, you go
but
to
I have seen
Prague,
some people
whatever, you're
get
going to
into
face
some
the same
really
level of
crazy situations out here.
needed
They had a hard
heightened
time getting out of. But
awareness of what's going
you know,
around you.
Mhm.
There's
drugs,
people that,
alcohol,
you don't get your stuff
women, stuff
stolen
like
outside of
that, will get you
Sacramento,
into those
San Francisco
situations.
or New York City or whatever. And so Americans just don't have this level of heightened security. You need to have that in Brazil, Mexico, France, wherever you go. And so they just don't have that.
For the petty crime, the thing that bothers me, especially when Americans do it, it's like the Sao Paulo homicide rate is at one of the lowest levels in like 20 years. So if you look at the actual statistics, like the homicide rate in Sao Paulo is like 13 per 100,000. In Las Vegas, it's 31. In Cleveland, it's 33.7. Right, New Orleans, it's 40. Like Atlanta, Georgia is higher than Sao Paulo. So it's like you're way more likely to get murdered. Like I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and like I would never go to Philadelphia after dark. Like not in a million years are you going to see me downtown in Philadelphia. Like there's just drug addicts nodding off. It's extremely dangerous. And I'm
I
way
mean,
more likely to get murdered. Like I'm probably more likely to get my cell phone stolen in Sao Paulo. Fine, but I feel like I'm more likely to get murdered downtown in a lot of American cities. And
yeah, like
statistically,
Yeah,
that's true.
the statistical murder rate is a different thing though, because it's mostly about, like, in the case of São Paulo. Okay, now São Paulo is controlled by a single drug faction and they control the entire city, so there's no war, there's no more drug related murders as much as you had in the 90s, for example. But like if you go to the Northeast, where there's active confrontations between the cartels, you see like murder rates.
ridiculous.
If they were independent states, some of the states in the Northeast would be the most violent in the entire world, right?
Yeah,
So something you don't see that much in the South as well. For example, it is a safer place in general, not just for violent crime and for petty stuff. But like one thing I think is important to note, besides like the geographical, like, oh, South is a bit safer, like North is a bit more violent. It's also about the local profile, because when you guys arrive in Brazil as a gringo, no one knows you, and you're basically anon, right? Like you're living a good life, but you're not really a target. Like what you see a lot about in these like bigger cases in Brazil of like kidnappings, or the reason why all the elites in São Paulo have blinded how to say, like, bulletproof vehicles, is because they are a target, right? Like the son of a supermarket owner, these kinds of people who have local
And doesn't
wealth
that
and
also
people
bleed
know
over
that
into
they're
actual
rich.
local
These
Brazilians?
are the kind
Because
of people who
condomínio
like have
fechado is like
bulletproof
so popular.
cars, who are
You've made it when you get into
in the
a
condos with
security, a
the like
secure
all this
building with a guard.
security
When you live in
and so
Floripa,
on. So I
Blumenau,
think that
or
is a natural
Salvador,
advantage. If you're
in the
arriving to
nice
the country,
areas,
you
do
have
you really even need
a
that?
blank
But it's
slate,
like
right? You're
seen
not
as such
attracting attention
a
anywhere
mark of
unless
like
you
the region,
decide to
or it's
attract some
necessary. But I don't even
unnecessary
think it
attention.
really is. Like your building, you have a door guy or a few or a gate, Steven, right? Do you live in a nice area? Is it necessary? If you're in the street, are there guys outside that like, yeah, okay, well, I shut my mouth, man.
Yeah, bro. I got a potato and all that stuff, man. I live in a pretty popular neighborhood. It's called Vitoria. So it's like oh, this is the nicest neighborhood in the city. You know, that's what all the Brazilians say. It's cool to me, you know, but I live on I would say it's a busy street, but all the apartments are all closed off. But it's not like Alphaville or anything like that, where it's like a whole side of town is blocked off. But you definitely do need it. I would say you definitely need at least a doorman for sure here. You know, because it can get a little crazy.
And you have a maid and a
I
driver.
have a maid, I have a driver, and a maid. Yeah, yeah, man. I got a whole little crew of people over here.
Dude, one of my biggest recent lifestyle upgrades that when you move kind of from digital nomad to medium or long term expat, getting
Hmm.
that made, oh my God.
It's love, bro. It's so awesome, man. Like my maid, she wasn't here today, and it's like the first time she hadn't been here like during the week in a long time. And I was like, damn, I kind of miss it because like I'm just used to having somebody in the house cooking breakfast, cooking lunch, and making my bed and all that stuff. But it's just like
Hmm.
it's kind of like the thing you do here, like because for those of y'all who don't live here, like there's so much more service based jobs here, and so like having a maid is just like par for the course, And so the Brazilians are the ones who got me into it, getting a maid. You're like, yo, you need a maid. I'm like, what?
It's very common.
Okay.
That's a thing. Like if you're a middle class, like upper middle class in Brazil, you have someone coming over to clean at least like once or twice a week. It's not a like I'm part of the elite. It's no, like people have maids.
Well, all the apartments
Yeah,
even have like maids' rooms like built into them
Hmm.
too, like in the
They'll have
back.
maids' bathrooms.
Yeah, yeah, entire like little like suite just for the
Hmm.
live-in maid.
Yeah, like a lot of the like kitnets and flats that Drez talked about earlier will come with maid service as part of like the condominium fee. Where they'll just come and clean every day, like it's a hotel. Like you can sometimes they'll put a little thing on the door of the hotel, and they'll clean every day if you want them to.
mm-hmm.
It's nice. Wake up
No,
every
it's
day. My
amazing.
coffee's there, made. I'm not like fiddling with the thing. It's great.
Does that produce like a lack of just general like life skills and responsibility among like Brazilian like upper class, upper middle like you don't know how to wash your own clothes, like you don't know how to cook, you don't know how to clean anything, like you like you don't even know how to like leave the toilet seat up or down or whatever. Like does it I mean does that if you guys notice any of that? Like does that sort of is there like a lack of some of these kind of basic like life skills just because like people are just used to having maids do all that stuff for them?
Well, I'll speak as a housekeeper employer.
Personally attacked.
I'll speak first. Yeah, I don't know how I'm an American. I don't know how my washing machine works. I'm gonna be real with you. I bought my washing machine, and then my housekeeper started working immediately after that. So like, I don't know how that works. But it's all because it's in
Bro, but that's
Portuguese.
in the U.S.
Number
too.
two, here, at least here in Bahia, like these guys ain't messing around with these women. So like, the women take care of these guys pretty well. I'm not talking about housekeeping, just in general. I'm not talking about dating. But I know like all my guys that I'm friends with that are Brazilian, like 90% of those guys don't know how to cook anything, clean anything. You know, I don't know how they brush their teeth in the morning. You know, no offense. Yeah, but the guys aren't getting taken care of like not getting taken care of by their women like they are here. You know, and so the guys in America just suffering through, but the guys here are like they're like, yeah, my mom cooks everything, or my girlfriend, my wife, she makes everything for me. So yeah, I don't have to do that. So you know, that's part of it, I think.
I think on the topic of not knowing how to do things, one thing that shocked my girlfriend and also a couple of the people that come to Brazil, it's that not everyone dances samba, not everyone knows how to play capoeira. Like a lot of these cultural stereotypes that you have of Brazil are it's a minority, right, of the population that can actually do these things. Like a lot of us appreciate like listening to samba or seeing a roda de capoeira, but it's a much more specialized skill. Like if you learn how to dance samba, that will be impressive at a party, and it's not going to take much effort for you to learn to a level where you're already above, at least 80% of the population.
Hey everybody, hey everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America, and Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information.
Right. Well, it's like it's like assuming that all Canadians like know how to play ice hockey at like elite. And it's actually like
Yeah,
Vance knows how to play ice
don't
hockey.
they though?
But
I'm pretty good at hockey. I'm pretty good at hockey.
But like, I mean, if you don't start out when you're like a little kid, like learning how to play, like learning like ice skating is like the hardest freaking thing to learn like ever. It sucks because like you fall down and it hurts, and you're like, this sucks. Whoever invented this sucks. Like it's a terrible idea, and it's just. But it's like the amount of people who can actually do that well is like very small, even in a place like Canada.
But I like what Francisco's point is, really, which is that there's a lot of these little cool life skills that you can learn where you can invest maybe 50, 100 hours of your time just to get to like low level competency, like playing the guitar or samba or salsa dancing or something like that. And it really sets you apart in relative to the ROI. Like there's a high ROI relative to the time that you need to do it. And Brazil has some cool hobbies that don't exist in the rest of Latin America, which maybe you guys could speak to a bit more about. Capoeira, I've done a little bit of it as well. I love it. I think it's so cool. I'm not very good, but and even the like tiny bit I've done, like 10 classes. One time I was in the nightclub in Portugal and these guys started doing capoeira in the nightclub and I was able to like go up and like fucking like they were just joking. I was able to just like jump in the what do you call it, the roda, and I was able to jump in the roda for a second, and be like, yeah, what's up? It's just like a joke, funny thing. Helps make friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say like for me, like I might be I did a lot of capoeira over the last 5 years, like a lot. I've had a batizado, gained new chorus and everything. Like half of my friends are capoeiristas, and I've done a lot of that. So like I've done hodas and
That's the
carnivals,
most valuable one
Imanjá,
to pick
and
up, man.
the
The rest,
club, all that stuff. I've done
I
all
never
of
learned
it,
that. I never had
and
the
it
coordination, never
has
played
been
soccer. But the futsal
like
volley
you said, it's been a high
would be the
ROI.
best one
Same
to
thing with
learn. If
Fojo, same
anyone's
thing with
listening and
Samba.
can do it, I would.
What else? I did a lot of like footsie volley. That's a big one. Footsie volley is a big one.
I wish I had the athletic ability to do fuchi volley, but I don't.
Hey,
I will disagree because I'll stick to Stephen here on on the capoeira side of things. I did it for 1.5 years, 2 years, and I honestly believe it's one of the most complete physical activities that you can do, in the sense that a lot of those movements require a lot of strength, like just pure strength. They require balance because you're doing acrobatic stuff. They require speed because it's also about reaction and all the time acting and reacting against each other. You're training your musicality at the same time because you have to be doing it to the rhythm of the music, and at the same time
Let
you're going to be playing the instruments
let,
as well.
let
So you're really
me
putting
let
like
me
everything
challenge
that you
that,
can consider
right? So capoeira is
as
sick.
part
I
of
like it,
sport,
and yes, it's a
like
good full body
reaction,
movement. But when will
flexibility,
you ever be
strength,
able to pick up a
speed,
girl in a
music. You
bikini
can have
on the
all of it in a
beach
single
with
package, and you're learning
capoeira? You're
Portuguese at the
not. You're
same
gonna
time because all the
use
musics are in
futsal.
Portuguese. So to
Yep.
me, the highest ROI would be capoeira, and it's just really fun as well.
In the South, I have never seen
Yeah,
people
and
doing capoeira on the
my bad,
beach, but
Stace.
I see every single person knows how to play futsal.
Dude,
Well, I challenge you on that one.
I challenge
Hey,
you on that as well. Like,
you on listen,
I dance full, I dance samba, I do jujitsu, I did
but here is the
capoeira. None
thing,
of those
man.
skills translate into
If you
real
can
life
dance,
except for
that's
fights
it. If you
at
can
the
do fall,
club,
if you can do
at the
samba,
bar.
you don't have to say shit. You
The
don't have to do foot
futsal
volley.
will
You don't have
get
to
you
do
chicks on the beach.
capoeira. You wait till the music starts playing. You don't even got to speak Portuguese, man. And that's it. You
Who's
got
the
it. You
who?
won. You won the game. You know, bro. You know, we're not talking about dating. So
you can go just
I'm
straight to
looking.
volleyball if you want. It's way easier, and you also have it in all major Brazilian beaches.
Yeah,
Can
it's
I
also
ask a
true.
question as a more of a Brazilian outsider? So when you think about samba and samba lessons or the skills involved, so there's the dancing, but then there's also the instruments and the guys that just do like jam sessions and they have like the ukulele type thing. What's that
Mhm.
about?
Cavaquinho. Yeah, the cavaco is like this
Or
small,
just like
very
in
small
general,
instrument.
like everyone's like doing like jam sessions and like people bust out the you know what I mean, the percussion and like they just do all these like jam sessions like in the street in Rio and Blocos and different things like that. Is that a skill that someone could get into? Is like if they're especially someone who's musically oriented to kind of maybe pick up some Brazilian instruments, maybe even just play the drums and jump in those jam sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that there's a lot of things to samba that one can see. Like in Floripa, when I was there, I was asking Stakes for any recommendations of samba classes because again, my foreigner girlfriend wanted to have some lessons, and you can't find it. Like you don't find actual samba no pé lessons, which is the one that you associate like with the these carnival queens doing all the samba move. What you find usually are these samba classes for pair dancing because that's also a possibility. There's this pair style of samba called samba de gafieira, and then you have like the one which you see in carnival. And for that, just go to a samba school, right? Like a couple months before carnival, they're gonna start all the drilling and all the classes and all the parades, etc. That's just probably the best opportunity to find it. And if you're in a big city that has a famous carnival like Rio, the drilling for the carnival is basically the whole year, right? They never take a
Yeah,
break. Whereas if you're in Florianopolis, it's going to be like oh, you have 3 months of the year where they actually care about that.
yeah. Hey guys, I'm gonna get out of here. All right, I got more to do. I got another call I gotta get on. But I appreciate everybody. I've seen most of y'all on Twitter already, so it's good to see a name with a face. Francisco, muito prazer, viu?
Exactly.
Everybody, have a good night, and I will talk to y'all later.
Ciao.
Thanks, Steven.
You good, man.
All right, y'all. All right.
Cool guys. I'm good another 15 minutes till the hour. So let's keep jamming a little bit.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm up.
Has anyone actually participated in the carnival, like in like the floats or in the parade as a like in it?
Nah, never. Just on the street parties.
Now you guys know your next challenge.
No.
Yeah, the thing about samba, like closing the other topic, is what you're gonna find mostly is just these samba like circles, right? When you go to a bar and there's a group playing samba, but it's somewhat rare for people to be doing actual samba dancing, like in a small bar where everything's closed off and so on. It's more on, I don't know, like more open spaces or special occasions, or even carnival, where you're gonna see the people doing the like the classic dance that you see in all these carnival queens.
Hmm. Very cool. Yeah, I mean it's a whole different set of hobbies in Brazil compared to the rest of Latin America. Like maybe, if you do salsa in Medellin or whatever, like I guess maybe you'll translate a little bit, but you're gonna have to learn something new if you want to dance in Brazil, I guess, right?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu is another big one that a lot of the gringos come visit for. I know Stakes mentioned it too. I
Mm,
train in Sao Paulo at one of the bigger gyms, one of the more famous gyms, and there's always at least a couple gringos in there training. It's a bucket list type place, so
mm.
that's another hobby if people are interested in train all over. I mean,
Is that a Gracie one
it's
or?
Alianci, it's Alliance in Sao Paulo, so it's a bigger
Big one
one.
too.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good school, and like they're pretty set up, very professional. So like they get the gringos in and out. Never heard anyone complain. Yeah,
Yep. Another point, like you mentioned about the salsa, it's a big cultural shock that Brazilians are quite closed off when it comes to music styles, right? It's a known world, right? You're not sharing, like, oh, you have cumbia in a lot of Hispanic speaking countries. You have like a reggaeton. You It's being heard all over, but in Brazil,
Before I
no,
went to
there's not
Brazil, I
really
actually
that much of a
became
reggaeton
I was
penetration. It's
obsessed with bossa
it's
nova. So
mostly
70s
just you're
música
listening to samba,
popular
you're listening to forró
brasileira.
sertanejo, and you're listening
And
to funk. It's like
I went
usually
there
one
and
of the three.
I was like, do you know who Marcos Valle is? He's my favorite artist. I love him. And I
Don't know
was
if you
naming
guys
off all these
experience
other people, and
something
nobody knew
different,
who they
like
were.
in the interior, for example, in
This is like
Brasilia. Like
classic
what is it that people actually
Brazilian
listen to
music that
mostly?
penetrated the world. And no, and so they were so focused on MC Kevinho and all these people that are just like came out this past year that make music that's like, yeah, the worst music. And then they overlook like Brazilian music that is known the world over. And yeah, they really don't cross borders with their music. Like Bad Bunny, I don't think he's ever done a tour in Brazil. Or where has he? Maybe Rio, like Rock in Rio.
MC Pipoquinha. I don't know. In Sao Paulo, like, most of the Brazilians I know like all kinds of international music, like the rock bands, like AC/DC, Metallica, all those '80s, '90s rock bands got really popular too. Like
Hmm.
I don't know. I never would have thought. I don't know. Brazilians I've met, I've never would have said they only like certain types of Brazilian music. Like
No, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it's only Brazilian music, but the amount of it, like especially when you were talking about Latin America, right? It shares very little with the rest of Latin America in terms of music styles. But yeah, there's rock and there's like rap and there's like, I don't know, Taylor Swift for the girls
yeah, I
and
think part of the reason
these
Brazilians
kinds of
I'm
like
things.
updating it
foreigners so much
constantly.
too
I
is like
got a
they
few new
connect
hits
with
on there. Yeah, I just
like
go through the archives,
international
dude.
culture
Just
more
finding
than
like
a lot of
70s and
countries
80s
do. Like
Brazilian
the
music.
U.S.
Some
series
of
do
it's
well in
new,
Brazil.
but yeah, they like
Hmm.
The
AC/DC and
bands
all that
too.
stuff. But
Stakes,
here's like how
I was definitely
I
rocking
think
your
more to the point of
playlist
what
for a
Fran is
while.
saying is
What's
like
it called?
Bad Bunny.
Village by the Sea
Bad
vibes,
Bunny
something
plays
like that.
everywhere in
It's
the
got
world.
like some bossa
I
nova
don't,
and
I
all
haven't,
that stuff.
I
There's
don't
some good
know. I
shit
don't
in
listen to
there.
the radio in Brazil, but is he well known in Brazil? Is he like as popular? Because he's everywhere, right? And he's like the Latin American king. So I think it's more current music that they kind of refrain from. but you can even see that. So in my playlist, you guys might like it. It's bossa nova and new stuff. The Afro jazz, Afro Latin is just heavily influenced by Brazilian music. It's just like a new wave bossa nova. Good stuff. Yeah, I'll repost it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Is that on
dude, it's
Spotify?
vibes. It's vibes. Yeah, it's a Spotify playlist. Well, yeah, DM it to me too, and I'll put it in the show notes.
I recommend checking the lo-fi remixes of this kind of Brazilian music. There's been a good movement in Gabriel M Zero, Saib, etc., where these guys make lo-fi versions of Brazilian bossa nova, and it vibes.
Speaking of vibes, moving on from music, we got like maybe 10 minutes left. Let's just talk a bit about like
I'll
what
give it a
keeps you
go.
guys
It
in
seems like a lot of the
Brazil, or
guys
in
here have
Jersey's
like
case, what
families
keeps you coming
and they're
back
kind
to
of tied in,
Brazil.
or their
It must
businesses
be
based
something
in
about
Brazil
that
and all that stuff.
Brazilian
So for me,
vibe, the culture, how you feel
I
while
kind of
you're
just got locked
here.
in. I spent a lot of time
Um,
there in my
let's speak a
20s,
little bit
and
about that
the
because it's
culture
it's it's
in the
something
south
that's
of
very
Brazil is
hard
like
to
very similar
capture,
to what
but
I'm
hope
used to.
maybe
It's
you
what I
guys
grew up
can
with, right? It's
can take a
like
stab at it.
so I enjoyed it there, but it was 1/4 the
I
price
can
of
go.
everything. The
Or
beaches don't compare to anything else, and I did enjoy this novelty. Even though I look Brazilian, right? You guys who are on this call can see I look like I'm even darker than like most Brazilians, right? But do we? Me, hey, Fran's my brother, dude. I like that. We do. We have the same face shape. But yeah, like I had the novelty of being a foreigner, but not looking as a foreigner. And
You look like a Brazilian soccer
I'm
player.
a sovereign citizen. I'm not tied to any specific place.
you
So
and, you and
just because I
Francisco
spent a lot of time
legit
there
look
and
the
I kind of got
exact
stuck
same.
there, it's become a place that I have a lot of connection to. I know the language. I know how things work, and they have amazing beach
Yeah.
cities, and then you have like really
Very
quaint
so.
interior
Yeah.
cities that offer a lot of land and opportunity if you wanted to do something to that regard that's very affordable. So long term, it's definitely a place that's high on my list.
yeah, I mean, I approach it from a very like utilitarian sort of mindset where like I just look at, I've been here for about 12 months now consecutively, and I just look at like basically like, every area of my life is just like much better from like my housing, to like the amount of money I'm spending to like the quality of food that I'm eating. Like I'm in the best shape physically that I've been in probably like 20 years, just because I'm it's just the gym culture and just being active and it's I just feel like I'm like much just better positioned here for success and just living like a quality life basically. And I have my family ties here as well, so it's nice to have that. And like my son, I have him in a school here, so he's finally like learning Portuguese properly. So it's a good experience for him to be able to like have that, you know, dual citizenship and like really kind of learn the like the Brazilian side of his kind of his heritage, whatever, and like learn the language and be able to connect with people here and stuff. So that's been a really valuable experience. I mean, that's something. I mean, I grew up in like rural Minnesota. Like, I mean, I didn't even like get on a plane until I was, like 15 or something. Like, like if I was like Minneapolis, that was like the big trip. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to the big city. So like just having the ability to like give my son to grow up and experience new culture like this is pretty invaluable. I think you can't really put a price on that.
So I would say for me, I really, really like the culture, the people. It just has this feel that I don't get anywhere else in the world. I've spent time in most Latin American countries, and there's just something about the Brazilian culture that speaks to me. I love the food here. Um, I think also the country is just so diverse and has so much to offer. So, between switching between these smaller interior cities, the beautiful beaches, Sao Paulo, which is really a unique city, I think. I mean, on one hand, it's a concrete jungle, but it just has this energy, this excitement that really no other city anywhere is exactly like Sao Paulo. And then for me, you have Rio, which is just sort of like this perfect combination of everything. It's this international city. It has world class beaches and just unparalleled natural beauty. So I tend to gravitate towards Rio here just because for me, that city's the perfect combination.
Yeah, I take it pretty pragmatically, I guess. Like I travel a lot, and I stay like a month or two, like longer term, wherever I go. And I always think, oh, would I live here? And wherever I go, I always look back at Brazil and I go, that seems like a better option. Like I have a really high quality life in Brazil. Like the culture's really engaging. There's opportunities. Like it's a huge economy. It's diverse. Like there's still things to learn. So even after a decade, I still get excited to go back and yeah, I think it's a place worth building. It's a pretty solid long term bet, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I personally am not currently living in Brazil, but I always spend at least like 4 or 5 months of the year back home. And like when I first emigrated, I had this. I think a lot of the Latin Americans that leave have this thing like, "Oh, I never want to come back." It's look at how everything is safe in Europe and the public transportation, whatever. But the more I stayed away, the more like, yeah, there's just so many things about the Brazilian lifestyle that you don't find anywhere else in the world, right? Like the language. I think language does affect how you think on your day to day, how you interact with people. I think maybe that's part of why the culture is the way it is. I love the culture. I love the music. I love bossa nova as well. I love samba. I love even the food. Some of the fruits you have in Brazil you don't find anywhere else. Like pitanga, for example, is one of my top three
I
fruits.
had
And
to
when I'm in
look up what
Floripa, I'm
pitanga
just walking
is,
around and
and I've
grabbing
seen that
pitanga from
everywhere.
the
I never
trees
knew
that you
that you
find in
can
the
eat
street
it.
everywhere.
I'm always very scared of
And
eating random
if you're
things
trying to
of
find
fruit.
it somewhere in
So
Europe or even
thanks for
elsewhere in
letting me
Latin
know.
America, you just
Yeah, I've
won't.
been missing out
So
forever.
there's
That's
it's
like on the
this combination
sidewalks
of all
everywhere. It
these little
stains the
things that when you
sidewalks like
put it
everywhere.
together, just make Brazil something unique. And I want to be there, like at least half of the year.
If you guys all been to the
You have missed out.
You
And
guys
it's
ever been
Before
delicious.
to
and after.
the Mercadão in Sao Paulo, like that municipal market where like
Mhm.
those like fruit guys are like trying to like they're kind of like they're trying to like scam you basically, like they try to like hustle you, they see you're a gringo and they're giving you all these free fruit samples,
Yeah, I've been there.
and then they're like, oh, you want to buy this pineapple? That'll be 800 reais.
Yeah.
Like
I
they try to
go
just like
I go to the same street fair to get my groceries in Sao Paulo for years. And there's like a steak guy, coffee, vegetable guys, the fruit guys, the hustlers. Like those are the guys you got to watch out for. Those guys will take like pieces of sweet stuff and they'll give it to like 2-year-old kids when they walk past their parents, like give them a little sugar, and then the dad has to stop. And yeah, they're hustlers, man. You got to watch out for the fruit guys.
yeah, and they put all this like fake sugar on the fruits too before they give it to you to make it seem like it's like some sort of super exotic thing, right? And it's but now whenever I see those guys now, I just go up, I just ask them directly. I'm like, so I've heard about these like golpe das frutas. Like, how do these things like the fruit scams? Like, tell me how these things work. And the guys are like, oh, look, like we don't do that here. It's only those other guys that do it. But they tell you some of these guys will tell you the tricks of the trade of how they scam tourists. So it's always kind of fun. But
I
anyway,
love
yeah, I
how
remember my
the
first
final
experience
note here
there.
of the podcast is fruit scams. But
Yeah, final notes of the giant mortadella
Yeah,
sandwich. If you go to Sao Paulo, it's one of the
yeah,
like that place gets. He's talking about the big market. It's a huge tourist spot. Like the last
yeah,
time I went, just to like go, just because I've been a bunch of times, you could barely even walk in it. It was so crowded. Like, it's a huge tourist spot, and they do these giant mortadella sandwiches that are like, 20 centimeters tall. It's
Mhm.
pretty good.
I did that once.
Yeah, it's a good sandwich.
Epic. Well,
Yeah.
guys, really, really cool. I wish we go a little longer. I actually have a call right now in like 30 seconds. But this was a really cool podcast that we did, Brazil Roundtable. I just want to thank everyone again, Patrick Flood, Aaron from Brazil Crypto Report, Francisco Litvai, The Way of Jers, Stakes is High, Stephen Story. So really, really happy that we were able to put this together, and I think it came out great. And I wish everyone muita sorte on your Brazil adventures.
All right, guys, be good.
Valeu, galera. Boa noite.
Appreciate it. Até mais.
Tchau.
Até mais. Tchau, tchau.